Hello my Year 11 Maths class. We are doing the Bivariate data assessment and this is how to get a pass. You have to do the PPDAC from the start to finish for this assessment. Good news is we get given the first P, the problem. Our problem today is the relationship between mandarin circumference and mandarin weight. We then have to write a plan, and the plan includes 3 components. The plan has to say how you're going to get the measurements, what you're measuring, and any possible sources of variation. So in this one, a simple statement, I am going to measure the circumference of the mandarin around its widest point in centimetres, and then I'm going to measure weigh the mandarin. My variables will be circumference in centimetre and weight in grams. I will have to estimate where the widest point on the mandarin is, and this is a possible source of variation. Not everybody is going to get the exact widest point every time. So when you go around the mandarin, you might go a bit skew if you have to be very careful about measuring it. So that's why it's a possible source of variation. There could be other sources of variation, so you have to come up with that. Then we grab our scales and we measure it. 117 grams. And then you'll get your next mandarin and you'll do the circumference and you'll weigh that. And then you'll get the next mandarin and you'll do the circumference and you'll weigh that as well. While you're doing it, you might look at the mandarins and decide they have slightly different shapes, which they do. This one's flatter and this one's taller. We'll have to remember that because we can talk about that later. Once you've done all of your bits of data, then we put the whole class together and I'll print out the data for you for the second session. And the second session is the analysis. The analysis, we do a scatter graph. Remember that a scatter graph has the predictor variable on the bottom and the response variable or explanatory variable up the side. In this case, it doesn't really matter which way around they go, but it makes sense that the circumference predicts the weight of our mandarin. So we're going to put circumference on the bottom and weight up the side. If our data comes out with a graph that matches this line, it's a positive relationship, which means as circumference goes up, so does weight. If our graph matches this line, it's a negative relationship, which would mean that as circumference goes up, weight went down. Which isn't true for this one, because we've done a graph with a nice title and labels on the axes. I haven't done a scale, but you will. And we can do the rest of the analysis from looking at this graph. And the graph shows us that there is a positive linear trend, which means as circumference goes up, weight goes up. And there is an unusual feature. This point here is a mandarin that is quite wide on the circumference scale, but not as heavy as we would expect on the weight scale. This mandarin is probably quite flat. Then we do our conclusion, and our conclusion answers the question. Our conclusion says the mandarins we have measured have a relationship between circumference and weight that as one gets bigger, so does the other. That's enough to get achieved. If you would like to get merit, you need 2 more statements in your conclusion about the mandarin's relationship between circumference and weight. And if you want to get excellence, then you should talk about the strength of the relationship and the direction, positive, negative, and relate that back to reasons, talking about why that makes sense with mandarins. And you also need to reflect on the process. Could you have done anything better? What would you have changed? What would you do next time if you're going to do this assessment again?